Hello, everyone. My name's Cash Miller, and this is Emerging Brands, Franchises on the Rise. I'm your host and CEO of Titan Media Works. We're a podcast production company. Today, we're going to be talking, this isn't your average business concept because you would think it's old school, but we're talking laundromats. We're talking LaundroLab, and I've got with me Beck Miller. This is the laundromat of the future, really. You know, Beck, hey, it's great to have you on. Tell us a bit about what you do. Tell us about LaundroLab. Like, what's the backstory? You know, how did this franchise get going?
Yeah, so it honestly started kind of by accident. We have a sister company, affiliate company that works very closely with our franchising brand that started back in 2016. And the whole goal of that company was to scale pickup and delivery, wash, dry, fold. So going out, acquiring customers who would otherwise never use a laundromat. These are more affluent customers that are really just looking to outsource their laundry to get time savings back. So we would go out, get those customers, run the pickup and delivery routes, and work with local mom and pop laundromats. So we'd bring them the laundry, pay them to clean it, pick it up the next day, and then go deliver it. And as we scaled, we realized there were a lot of issues with that. The traditional laundromat that's out there today is very old school. It's got 30-year-old equipment. It's smaller. It's 2,000 square feet or less. And it's traditionally, a lot of owners are very set in their ways. They're comfortable with what they've been doing. The norm is there. It's a if it ain't broke, don't fix it mindset. And so as we scaled, that ran into a lot of issues, right? They weren't able to effectively process everything. They wanted to do things their way. There was quality control issues. And as we were working with several different stores, everything was different, right? Depending on what store it went to, you'd have a better quality product. Things were getting lost. They didn't have enough storage space, all of those kinds of things. So in 2018, we realized we needed to vertically integrate in some capacity. And so we opened up our own laundromat in 2018 in South Charlotte. And the original goal was basically just kind of a means to an end. We wanted to be able to cover the fixed expenses of the building with the walk-in revenue. So just cover the real estate, the debt service, if we could cover some of the utilities and the payroll, great. And we thought the pickup and delivery would be the profit. And as that started operating, we realized we probably underemphasized that portion of the model a good bit. It broke even very quickly. It cash flowed positive very quickly, and it operated with a good margin rate. And that really was solidified in 2020 when COVID happened. A bunch of other businesses obviously struggled. You had gyms, spas, salons, restaurants either had to completely change how they were operating or close for a period of time. And so their revenues were way down. That store, our revenue was up 15% year over year in 2020. And so that was really the light bulb moment for us. There was something here that we needed to lean into a little bit more. And that was when the decision was made to add on the additional layer to the business of franchising and launch the LaundroLab brand.
Yeah, I got to ask, because, laundromats have been around like forever. I mean, and there was a time when, people, they were used a ton, because, washers and dryers were really expensive. They were still newer, that's why like they've been around for such a long time, but why are they still relevant? Like, why is this kind of a concept in the 21st century, working? Because it seems like it would be something that's kind of gone away, but it hasn't. And that's really surprising.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially, I guess, timely, right? Based on kind of what we've seen over the last couple of years in terms of the inflationary environment and the macroeconomic trends that are kind of working against a lot of the lower income population. There is just a big trend right now of multi-unit developers coming into spaces, and they know that if they eliminate square footage for amenities in a unit, then they can add an additional door or two, and that's going to be more revenue for them when they either sell it or when they're fully leased out, whatever it may be. And one of the first things to go is the hookups for washers and dryers in individual apartment units and things like that. And so it creates these areas that are traditionally lower income areas that there's just no access to washers and dryers outside of maybe a shared laundry facility in that building. But typically, if it's 100 doors, there may be only 10 washers, 10 dryers. So it's not a very convenient experience, even though it's in that building. And so a lot of customers there will have to travel to, somewhere where they're outsourcing it, right? They're going to a laundromat to have that done. And there's over 20,000 laundromats in the United States right now, and the vast majority of them are not well taken care of. So it's a really ripe market opportunity to come in and build a more customer-focused approach for that individual market.
So how do you determine, like, from the standpoint of, like a lot of franchises, they do location help and stuff because they want to find the right spot. It's going to be profitable. How do you go about doing that? Like, what are some of the parameters you're looking for to determine an actual location?
Yeah, at the highest level, I call them the big three. You want population density, you want a high percentage of renters, and you want a low median income. Typically, when those three things intersect in a tight area, we usually look at like 10, 15-minute drive times from a specific location. Those are usually very good indicators that there's a high likelihood of success for a laundromat there.
Okay, so I always want to get into, the costs of a franchise because, if possible, I want to be able to, like, what's the sales opportunity here? But, laundromats are very equipment heavy. I mean, obviously you need washers, you need dryers and such, so, what kind of startup costs do you have to get into this kind of business?
Yeah, so right now, like if you look at our franchise disclosure document, it's a relatively high number. As I'm sure a lot of people that listen to your show know, franchising documents, they have to be renewed every year, and they're based on the previous fiscal year and whatever disclosures you want to do from a financial standpoint there. So our item 7, which is the upfront estimated expense there, it's based on fiscal year 22, which was about as expensive as construction has gotten ever in the history of the world. There was just shortages on just about every material, supply chain issues, subcontractor shortages, all those kinds of things. And so over the past year or so, we've seen an upfront investment of about 1.6 million, maybe a little bit above that, depending on how big the store is. We have seen that start to come down this year, though, which has been a positive change from that standpoint.
That's good. So how many washers and dryers does it take to actually outfit a store? Because these are industrial machines. These aren't the type of machines that you're going to have in your apartment, your house, whatever it might be, that you're going to go to Home Depot for. These are some serious units because they got to have staying power.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's the bulk of the expense. That's going to be, depending on, we usually do about 1 per 100 square feet. So if we're just make round numbers, right, a 4,000 square foot store, you're going to have about 40 washers and 40 dryers in the store. And that's going to be probably 60 to 70% of your total project cost just on those washers and dryers. There are some tax benefits with that. Washers and dryers qualify for Section 179 of the tax code, so bonus depreciation applies. So we have groups that come in and they're able to, this year it's 80%, it goes down to 60 next year. But our groups that opened this year, they're able to write off 80% of the full purchase price of their washers and dryers in that first year.
Oh, well, that's good. Yeah, you want to be able to take that as much up front because of the significance of the investment. Most laundromats, they are not the greatest looking places to walk into. They're pretty dingy. You mentioned old equipment. Like I say, haven't been updated, but your stores are not that way. I mean, they're like bright area. Like, can you walk us or like describe to us what these stores look like and what are the differences between what we think of traditionally as being a laundromat and what you guys have put together?
Yeah. So one of the things that we noticed as we started going into the markets was just that the vast majority of laundromats that are out there, like you said, they're just not well taken care of. And the reason for that is laundry's non-discretionary. The vast majority of customers that use laundromats do it because they have to. It's not something that they have a washer and dryer in their home, but they choose to go to a laundromat. Yeah. And so as a result of that, the vast majority of laundromats that are out there, there's been no incentive to put more than the bare minimum into them. And so you have this situation where the marketplace is predominantly just Everything's white. It's got old tile in there. They cram as many washers and dryers as they can into the space because they're told by some salesperson that the more washers and dryers you have, the more your top line revenue potential is. And all of those things happen at the expense of the customer experience. Yeah. Because if you try and overdo it with washers and dryers, then you lose space for seating, you lose space for additional laundry carts, you lose space for folding, all of those things that customers need, bathrooms even. All of those, like, we view them as table stakes, and we have very firm requirements on what the square footage is, how many washers and dryers that correlates to, and then how many feet of folding space, how big your play area should be for the kids, the lounge area, all of those kinds of things to really make sure that we're putting the customer first.
Yeah. Okay. So because you mentioned, having strict requirements of what these stores are going to look like and everything, how hard is it to find the space? Because you figure out the demographics, you say we need to be in this, general neighborhood, this area, but finding the space, like, where are you usually looking? Strip malls, standalone stores, whatever it may be. But what's the real estate look like that you got to find, and how hard is it to find it?
Yeah, real estate's tough right now. Nationwide strip center vacancies is like 8%, I think. So it can be difficult to find space. And the last thing that we want to do is rush a deal because this isn't a 1,000 square foot retail space that you can get a year-to-year lease on and just move if it doesn't work out. Yeah. This is you're looking for 10 years at least to make sure that your investment is worthwhile on it. And so we're very particular about real estate. And that's one of the big value adds of what we have on the franchising level is we have a full in-house real estate and data team to go out and qualify all these territories, put data behind where we're looking and why, and then we run the real estate process. Our franchisees, some franchises, and this works for certain groups, right? You have a zip code and that's your thing and you need to go get your location in that zip code. It's so important for us to position correctly that we run that process entirely for our franchisees, including helping with the lease negotiations or the purchase negotiations to try and get them the best rate and terms possible.
Well, I think that's really important. For any franchise, my opinion is that every franchise should be handling the location specifics, as much as possible because they're going to have access to the data. They also know what's worked for. You got a track record you develop every time you open a location, whatever it is. A new franchisee pops up. Well, how well those stores have done and what the demographics are for the location and everything and the cost of the lease and all, so that's extremely important. And I think with the significance of this investment, you've got to do that. Can't leave it. Don't leave the franchisee to their own devices because they're not even sure they're going to, I always like the example, there's a restaurant like building in this town. And I've watched 4 restaurants at least end up in that same building because one goes in, they're like, hey, this is a great deal. The equipment's all here. It fails 6 months later. Then the next one goes in, it fails 6 months later. And like I say, it's really expensive to open up any kind of location, this one especially. So, man, you got to have it. You better nail it right. Get it right the first time because you can't afford mistakes.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. That's the most important thing for us, right? Like that's why people buy into a franchise system. Like if you want to go open a laundromat, there are way cheaper ways to do it. You could go try and take over a lease for an old store that's really run down and retool it with some of the less expensive equipment. And that works for a lot of people. But for the brand that we're putting forward, it is a lot more expensive. And when people buy into our system, they're counting on us to help them minimize mistakes, de-risk the investment as much as possible. And that's the value proposition that we bring to the table.
Let me ask you, what kind of marketing support, that does it need for this type of business to start to attract customers? Like when you're going to a new market, you open a new store, what do you do to get it off the ground, get a good start to it?
Yeah, it's a great question. And laundry's weird because it's not something that is an impulse decision. You're just driving down the road and you see a McDonald's and you decide, I want some fries and a shake. You don't have all your clothes with you in the back seat. And so it's very intentional and it's very habitual. And so most of the customers aren't going on to Google and typing in laundromat near me. You're doing that if you move to a new area or if you're just traveling through and you need one. But if you're there, you already have a favorite laundromat. There's a place that you go the same day of the week, you go the same time, the people that are there at the same time. You have a favorite washer that you insist washes better than every other washer in the store, even though it doesn't. Like, it's very habitual. And so we have to break down those habits. And because of the nature of the industry, a lot of initial digital presence doesn't help. Like if you're pushing a bunch of like SEO and things like that on Google, that's not going to be a large chunk of your customer base. You have to get in front of them physically. And so there's every door direct mailers that we use. We do door flyering campaigns. We will go into local complementary businesses like discount grocers or discount wireless providers, pawn shops, dollar stores, those kinds of things, and leave flyers and do things with them, as well as doing discounting, right? Like we'll usually do a community day event where it's a free laundry day. And we're able to put that on, create a Facebook account for the page, load an event onto that Facebook page for the free laundry day, and get a lot of very localized social media buzz around that too. So it's things like that. It's very inverse of where every other industry has gone from a marketing standpoint. We're going back to the old school stuff.
Yeah, that really is. That's old school. It's funny though, because, I mean, I'm a digital marketer, but the print stuff has worked much better in these last few years because so many people gave up on it that people's, mailboxes are not saturated as much. So you can still stand out nowadays. You mentioned coupons too. Okay. So how do you end up giving a free laundry day essentially on the machines and stuff? Because I mean, it's like nowadays I haven't been in a laundromat in forever. Okay. So, are we swiping cards nowadays? Are we, still putting in quarters? How are we paying for it? Are we still, because I'm going to mention this, and I'm sure you guys aren't this way, but there's a lot of people that wanted to own laundromats because they wanted to launder, but it wasn't close. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And honestly, I'm very thankful for those people because those are the ones that just wanted to hide a bunch of money from the government and not reinvest into their business. And so they've created this market opportunity, right? What we do, so we're of the mindset collectively as a brand that we're a little bit too early to completely go away from cash. A lot of your customers are going to be unbanked, underbanked. They live paycheck to paycheck, and they don't want to put, if there's a $10 minimum, they only need to spend $5. They don't want to put 10 onto a card or an app or things like that. And so we set all of our stores up. We call them hybrid stores. So every single washer and dryer, you can put quarters into it. There's coin changers on site that you can put a $20 bill in and get change back and go run your washer. Yeah. Every machine also has a QR code on it though. And you can download the app to your phone, Android or Apple, and use it as a digital wallet. And that digital wallet you link your debit, credit card. Some states allow EBT. You load money up onto that. You just scan the QR code and you can pay for it directly with your phone. And then the way that we kind of bridge the gap is there's a kiosk in the store as well that you can press a button on, scan a QR code on it, put a $5 bill into it, and it'll load $5 onto your phone. So now the cash customers can still take advantage of the app and earn loyalty points and not have to pump quarters into a machine. But that's the current model. Everything is set up in a way where we can, with half a day's work, turn off quarters completely, and it's an app-only store. So we're kind of thinking about the future in that regard.
I think that's great because, I mean, there are a lot of people that, they're getting preloaded debit cards or whatever just because of the nature of, way things have gone, but you're allowing for, the future and, the past at the same time. I think that's good for, especially considering the locations of the stores, it's really necessary because they don't want to spend any more than necessary. They don't want to load, even if they're loading it up, they're going to load exactly what they need to be able to do this. They don't want to waste any money. And it's amazing though, that it shows you how far technology has gone though, that we can pay using a QR code for a washing machine.
Yeah, and it's funny to me too because you have like Wendy's and McDonald's, for example. They have fully autonomous restaurants where just everything's a robot. They have AI working the drive-through, and laundry just got QR codes. And that's like this huge thing for the industry. And so it just speaks to how much farther we still have to go. And that's one of the things that really excites us about investing now in the space.
Yeah, that's really good. So what is staffing for these stores? Because I know this can be like a semi-absentee, or even fairly, I would assume all absentee owner, if depending on what you want to do from a staffing perspective. So what is, how many people does it take to run one of these things?
Yeah, so we usually, our standard model is 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., so 16 hours a day, and it's just one employee from open to close. So typically it's 2 8-hour shifts, and that employee they're really the main customer service agent, right? Making sure the bathrooms are clean, greeting customers, helping them in and out with their clothes, teaching them how to download the app and use the washers. As we talked about, right? Most laundromats don't have any of this kind of technology. They're not used to these machines. They can be intimidated when they see a touchscreen on a washer. And so you need that person there for that customer experience to help them do all of those things. Okay.
So this makes me think, staffing obviously is like super low. That's great. So while it's an expensive upfront cost to get this thing going, it sounds like from an operations standpoint, though, it's not a high expense. It's a much lower, you're obviously machines take a lot of energy and stuff. So you might have a high power bill and, you got a fairly sizable space, So what from an expense standpoint can someone expect? I mean, because it sounds like it's a pretty good opportunity, from a profit margin point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, right, like there's really, really low variable expenses associated with this business. It's not something like a quick service restaurant where you have high COGS, where every burger you sell has all the ingredients that go into it. Your only real variable expense is going to be utilities. And utilities, depending on, your store, where you are, those kinds of things, it's going to be anywhere in the neighborhood of like 8 to 14% of gross revenue. So really minimal. And so once your big three fixed expenses, right, are going to be your payroll, your real estate expense, whether that's a mortgage or a lease, however you structure that, and any kind of debt service that you have on the equipment, construction, whatever it is on that end. So those are the big three that we work towards. The second our store opens, it's drive for those, achieve break even from that standpoint, and then it becomes easy to scale net margin after that.
Okay, so I always like to, so give us an idea if you can, of just like sales, because you're going to have some sort of either an average or, hey, our best store is doing this kind of number. And then how long does it take to kind of get to the break even point on one of these stores? It just from a time factor, is it 6 months, a year, if you have an idea of that?
Yeah, of course. So what we view when we're going out and building a corporate store is we're looking at the unit economics of the business. Our goal is to break even from a cash flow standpoint within 6 to 12 months. That's when we go out and we're targeting locations. We're going to factor all that into, what the rental rate is, what our projected debt service is, all those kinds of things. Our most mature store in the network that at this point in time, it's been open for about 5.5 years without taking all the pickup and delivery out of the equation, just the core LaundroLab business. It grossed $844,000 last year. With the pickup and delivery, that went up to about $1.4 million.
Wow, that's that much pickup and delivery for people?
Yeah, pickup and delivery is where a lot of the industry's going, because it's customers that would otherwise never use a laundromat, right? They don't even, especially in like tier 2 cities like a Charlotte, pickup and delivery laundry is not something that anybody's ever heard of. Obviously, like New York, Boston, Chicago, it's San Francisco, it's different. It's a very common thing there. But in Charlotte, it's not something that people are used to. And so we're going out and we're able to, on the 2U Laundry side of the business, right, we can go out and market to these customers that are more affluent and the time savings are worth more than the money to them, and they outsource all of their laundry via pickup and delivery. They would never go to a laundromat otherwise, but we're able to add additional revenue stream to our franchise locations via that pickup and delivery service in the markets where it's available.
Yeah, so you go get the clothes, come back, wash and dry and everything, fold it all up and deliver it, on the next, because you're running the route. So he's doing the same thing, go hit so many places, and you're either dropping off or you're picking up during the day, and you probably got one, vehicle, somebody driving it, however many hours to do it.
Yeah. And the beauty of it is that 2U Laundry works very similar to how like a DoorDash and a McDonald's would. So 2U Laundry is actually acquiring the customer. They're dealing with the customer from a centralized call center standpoint. They're hiring the drivers. They're getting the vans. They're running all of the logistics. They have the app and the dev team and all of those kinds of things. All the LaundroLab franchisee is doing is cleaning the clothes, just like all McDonald's is doing is making the hamburger, and then DoorDash is doing everything else. So it takes the burden of running that full separate business off of the franchisee, so they don't have to worry about additional employees and OpEx for the vans and marketing and those kinds of things.
So you're the DoorDash for laundry too.
Yeah, right. Better unit economics, hopefully, at scale than DoorDash, but yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So how does the revenue work though if you guys are doing the pickup and the delivery and the store is doing the actual cleaning? Is there a split or something? I mean, obviously there's some sort of breakdown because you've got costs on the corporate side.
Right. Yeah. It's not a split per se in terms of like a firm percentage one way or another, but 2U Laundry operates at very, very low margins because it is an affiliate company. We want this to be something that is a value add for the franchisees. So 2U Laundry is operating at 5% or less margins, and we're passing through anything other than that basically to the franchise location. So I'll just make up numbers, right? If 2U Laundry is charging $45 to the end customer, they're going to net out all their expenses, make a couple percent margin, and give what's left over there, which may be $25, $30 to the LaundroLab franchisee.
Wow. So that's pretty good considering you don't have to hire the people, do the driving, none of that. You just still got to clean the clothes, which is what you're in business to do.
Right. And you have that initial employee there. So it's something that you don't have to increase any fixed expenses because you already have the employee, you already have the real estate, you already have the washers and dryers. So it gives our franchisees the ability to be profitable from it on day one and then scale from there.
So what do you guys typically look for in a prospective franchisee? Who makes up a good owner for you?
Yeah, so we do have higher net worth and liquidity requirements because the brand is a more expensive one. So our bare minimum is $1 million in net worth, and we like to see about $500,000 in liquidity. That's typically, we would just approve one license for that. If you do want to get a development agreement, go 2, 3, 4. We do like to see that higher just so that we make sure that everyone's set up for success. The last thing we want is somebody that's in a stressed out situation from a cash flow standpoint before they break even. So that's important from that end, just on those parameters. What we look for personality wise is high emotional intelligence. There are a lot of highs and lows associated with being a business owner. And so groups that have, whether they own a small business themselves or they've previously been in another franchise or they're adding it onto their portfolio, that's really, really helpful. And that's something that we look for there because those highs and lows can be distracting. And if you haven't weathered that storm before, even with the support of a franchisor, it can be difficult to kind of take your eyes off the end goal and get distracted there. So we look for that. We look for some level of operational experience, whether that is business ownership or being in a operational role in their 9-to-5 career, and some level of understanding of a P&L, being able to work with the numbers and really understand the levers that go into the business, knowing how much you're making. All of those things are really important to us. Of course, in addition to the culture, we want culture is huge for us, right? We're in that stage where we're getting our first few franchises into the system. We have 10 open now and growing that out. The franchisees that we bring into the system now are really going to establish the culture for the next 100, 200, et cetera. And so we're very picky about that, making sure that they're the right people to add value to the whole system.
Yeah. My last question would be, how long does it take for, from start to finish, to get somebody like trained, opening, all of that? So from the time that they sign on and say, we're going to be a franchisee to get the doors open.
Yeah, so from the moment they sign, it's anywhere from the absolute fastest anyone could do it realistically is probably about 10 months. The fastest we have had someone achieve it is 12. That's really real estate dependent. As I mentioned, sometimes real estate can be difficult to find. So the last thing we want to do is rush a deal. So we're willing to be patient there. So 12 months is about as realistically as fast as it has gone. We have had builds that have gone out to like closer to the 16 to 18 month mark for the first one. Again, very real estate driven.
Yeah, well, I say that's the key piece to it all. If you put it in the wrong location, you've spent a lot of money, and you're going to blow that investment. So it sounds like you guys have a great concept, though, and you've also got a space where, I mean, I can't imagine there's a lot of other franchises that are laundromat business models. So you're really just competing against the a lot of the, I guess, traditional ones that aren't very well maintained and taken care of.
Right.
Is that about right?
Yeah, there's a couple other franchises that are in the space. All of them are very small in scale, just like we are. There's one that's they've been doing it for a couple more years than us. I think they're in between like 40 and 50 locations. But there's anywhere from like 20,000 to 25,000 laundromats in the United States. So we're all collectively a drop in the bucket, and there's room for multiple winners here. Every time I see someone, whether it's a franchise or a local operator that opens a high quality store, the rising tide lifts all boats, right? I'm excited to see the collective image of the industry start to change as we have more investor owners who care about the end customer building stores and kind of changing that reputation.
Yeah. Well, that's a great note to end on. Beck, how would someone get a hold of you if they want to inquire about a LaundroLab franchise?
Yeah. So if you want to learn more about the business, you can go to our website. It's laundrolabfranchise.com. So that's LAUNDROLAB franchise.com. You can also email me directly. It's Beck, BECK @laundrolab.com.
Okay, my name's Cash Miller. I'm the host of Emerging Brands. I'm also the CEO of Titan Media Works. We've been talking laundromats. It's a changing landscape, but it's also a great business opportunity. So if you are looking to get into the business, Beck's the one to call. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you on the next episode.